find any way that I could codify in some kind of screenplay form all of the experiences that I've been going through as a single person for like 10 years.
Yeah, that is so not what happened.
So what happened? What did I say to you?
What you said was you had this idea for a movie, that you'd
Right.
always loved this idea. Two people become friends
Right.
at the end of the first major relationship in each of their lives,
Right.
and they make a decision not to have sex because it will ruin the friendship, and then they have sex and it ruins the friendship. That's what you said. That was it, and that's the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
And you said it, and this was not the second idea you'd thrown at me. This was like you'd come in with a whole other thing. I don't remember what it was.
I don't remember. I remember the first thing I threw out. I remember you rejecting it.
Then there was a second thing, and
Yeah.
then you said, this sort of is a coda to the whole, well, this meeting didn't work either, but I'll throw this one out
I'll throw
there.
this out and see if she'll take
And
it.
I said,
Yeah, you
I
bit
can do
right
that.
away. Yeah,
I
yeah.
can do that.
Yeah.
I immediately saw beginning, middle, and end.
Right.
I remember getting in a taxi to go home and absolutely knowing the structure of the movie, knowing that
Yeah.
it started before it really started.
Right.
That it would be a couple that kept bumping into each other at all the wrong moments.
Times in their lives, yeah.
And then suddenly,
Right.
you know,
I remember that the process of when we started working on it, you being the great journalist and reporter that you are, you basically interviewed Andy and me to get stories and
yes,
things.
it was a horrifying experience.
Just to hear about
It was
our dating
horrible.
lives and what we had gone through.
Yes, what you had gone through and what you had put other persons of
Through.
another sex through.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
it was horrifying. It wasn't surprising. It wasn't like you said things and I went, oh my God, are you trying to tell me that? And yet it did have its moments
Right.
of, oh my God, are you trying to tell me that?
But that's what I think made the movie work so well, because you being horrified or whatever by, oh my God, this is what these guys do, and then you adding the elements of what, oh my God, this is what women do or what women think about. That's what I think made the movie work so well,
I think so, too.
because we just were honest about what really happens between men and women.
Right, yes.
Now you said it was like 1985, and so I made 2 films, I think, between the time you first started working on it and then we eventually shot the movie.
That's at least
Isn't that
2.
what happened?
At least 2.
I did Stand By Me and
The
Princess Bride. Both of those films. You
And
started
you
working
said
on it
to
before
me-
Stand By Me.
And you said to me, you're going to start this and I'm going to do Stand By Me,
Right.
and then we'll meet again, and then I'll do The Princess Bride, and then I'll do this, and that's what happened.
And so there were these long periods of time in between where you'd do a draft, and the draft would sit there.
Yes, it
would sit there,
certainly did.
And then we'd go back into it together, and then you'd do another draft, and then
Yeah.
it would sit there. And then after I finished Princess Bride, then we started working together, kind
Yes,
of together.
and that's when you had the idea that I think was so brilliant for the movie, which was the couples.
Right. I thought, that could be a little motif that we run through the
Yes,
through the
and
film.
of course at that moment I wanted to call the movie How We Met,
Yes.
or How
yes.
They Met.
Yeah.
We had so many titles for this
And
movie.
if you remember, during the shooting, we had a contest with the crew. So you could win a whole case of champagne if you could come up with a title. We had all kinds of Harry, This Is Sally.
Harry, This Is Sally
Well,
was
that
not
stuck
bad.
for a while.
I liked that one. I
Yeah.
liked it more than When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah. I didn't like When Harry Met Sally until I put the 3 dots there. The 3 dots
I
at the
know,
end.
I remember
The
this
3
theory.
dots were a big
But
thing
you
for
kept
me.
saying, but what about the 3 dots? And I kept saying, I still don't like it. I don't care about the 3 dots.
I like the 3 dots. Yeah. No, I know. So we had that was the thing. And for the longest time, they didn't get together in it one
The
time.
first draft,
Yeah.
they
yeah.
did not get together.
Right.
And that to me has always seemed like, forgive me, the true ending.
Well, it did to me too, and that's why I kind of went with that for a while, because I couldn't imagine how they could ever get together, or how a man could ever get together with a woman. But it made sense to me when
But
I
it
met
also
Michelle. I met Michelle in the movie, and then it made sense they could get.
Yes, I understand that. But
Yeah.
before you met Michelle, you had made a decision
Decide to do, yeah,
that
yeah.
they should get together. And
But I didn't feel good about it. I felt odd about it. I knew commercially you had to, kind of how to do that, but it didn't feel right. You know what I mean? It
well,
didn't
I
feel
think
right.
for the story, it doesn't really feel right. I know that there are people, because I meet them all the time, people come up to me and say, oh, my wife and I were friends. It's just like When Harry Met Sally, and
Right,
then we
I
got
get that
together.
too, yeah.
And then I also have way more people who come up to me and say, "Oh, I'm in this Harry Sally thing, and it's really not happening," and blah, blah, blah. And I say, don't let the movie fool you. Those people really don't get together in real life.
Well, it made them feel better. You make them feel better.
Well, I try to make them feel better, but I do think that if two people meet each other and they don't do it, it's because something's missing.
Yeah, sure.
And it's hard to make up for that.
Yeah, but I've also heard the stories of people who said we were friends for a very long time and then it did work.
I know.
Yeah, so there were those
so they
too.
must know something.
Yeah, so there were those too. So I mean, it could work. It could work. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was interesting that we always had that initial ending that was that way, and then we went the other way on it.
But then, when we started really working on it, and it was very late in the process, we were in your office in California, and all sorts of things came into the movie that it's embarrassing to me took so long to come into the movie.
Well, the whole thing about ordering.
The whole thing about ordering, and that was because we were ordering
because
lunch.
I watched you order.
I know, it was horrifying.
I watched you order, and I said, my God, this has to be in the movie.
I know, and I remember the sandwich too.
Which one? What was it?
It was avocado and bacon and sprouts and cheese, but I wanted half of it on the side and the mayonnaise in a little plate. You know, it was just unending. It was the 19th time I had done my horrible ordering
But
thing.
my favorite thing about the fact that, you know, you did order that way and that we did put it in as part of her character is we also included it in the scene when the four of them get together at the Cafe Luxembourg, and Harry says, you know, Sally orders the things in the ways.
She's a great orderer.
In a way that even the chef can't imagine how good it's going to come out, and that is the truth about you. Aside from all the craziness about ordering, you make their dishes better.
Thank you.
You
Rob.
improve what they do. It's like a prime ticket to get an invitation to one of your dinner parties because you are a great cook. It's not just that, you know, there's a reason why you're ordering it that way. It's not just your particular crazy taste.
Yes, I do know better.
But you also know that it's going to be better.
That's right. That's right. But anyway, there we were, and you said to me, we've told you all this stuff about guys. You tell us something about women that we don't know. And it was really like, I dare you to tell me something about women that I don't know.
Yeah, that happened in my office, I remember.
And I said, okay, women fake orgasms.
Yeah.
And you said,
no.
Not with me.
They don't, right. And then you said, how do you know?
I said, absolutely with you, and everyone does it. And you said, no way. And you really did't believe it. That was the most exciting thing about it.
But then I did a little unscientific survey around the office and found out
It was worse than an unscientific. You went thundering into the bullpen where they kept all the poor women who worked at Castle Rock in the unwindowed
and assaulted them with this question.
And did your Rob thing. Basically, get in here, right? And on these, like 6 terrified-looking women came into your office.
These days, it would be sexual harassment.
That's
I'd be arrested for sexual harassment.
And fired.
And probably fired. Yeah, I'd have to fire myself.
Yes, but and you said, do women fake orgasms? And they all said yes.
Yeah. At one time or another, they all said they had done it.
Yes.
And that was when I went, oh my God. Well, and then you wrote that great scene.
We wrote a scene, and then we had a read-through.
Yeah.
With Meg and Billy.
Right.
And we didn't have a faked orgasm.
No, initially we didn't. That was an idea.
Meg's
Meg said
idea.
I could fake an orgasm, and then we said,
It wasn't even in a restaurant.
No, we said, let's put it in an incongruous place. She just threw out that idea, and then we said, well, let's find an incongruous, crazy place that we could put it. And then Katz's Deli became the place. And then my mother became, which is my favorite thing, that she's now one of the top 100 in the AFI.
I know.
Top 100 most memorable lines in movies. That she's in there with Brando and Humphrey Bogart.
But that all happened right after that read-through. Was restaurant, faking the orgasm.
Right.
And Billy said, oh, well, then one of the customers can say, I'll have what
But
she's
having. He came up with that line.
And
yeah.
you said, and I know just
The
the
woman.
actor to say it, my mother.
Yeah.
It was there, it all was.
Yeah, it happened like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I told my mother that I was hoping that it would be the topper line because I knew the scene was going to be funny, and I was hoping hers would be because of the topper. Because if it wasn't the topper, then I might have to cut her. I was nervous that I might have to cut her. She said, "That's all right. I'll just spend the day with you. It'll be nice. I'll get a hot dog at Katz's Deli." But it worked out great. I mean, you never know. I mean, people always ask me. I'm sure they ask you about that. Did you know that scene was going to be what it was? I mean, it would be funny. We didn't know it's going to be talked about forever. That scene.
Well, or I once saw the movie without that scene because on airplanes they don't show. They didn't show
really?
it because
Wow.
that's what got the movie the
R rating.
ludicrous R rating that it has.
Yeah.
And so it was snipped out on the airplane.
God, I never saw it.
And so I'm on the airplane, and they're showing the movie, and about at least half the people on the plane had seen the movie.
And they went, what?
And there was this kind of, oh, because it was just, the scene just ended right before she faked the orgasm.
Oh, they had the scene, but they just
They
didn't
had the scene
yeah.
kind of up to that moment.
Did
and
she
then,
talk about faking an orgasm?
Yes, and then it just
Oh,
sort
that's
of
hysterical.
ended. And the movie is not as good without it, I have to say that.
It's one of those memorable scenes. I mean, you know.
Well, I remember when you first screened it, you called to tell me that the audience in the movie, all the women were laughing wildly and the men were completely silent.
Yeah. Because they had the same experience I had when I first heard about it.
I know, and that's amazing because it wasn't that long ago. Well, it was a while ago, but still it's hard to imagine that was a genuine secret from half the population, but it was.
Well, one of my favorite screenings that we went to, apropos of that scene, was we had a royal premiere, and Princess Di was still around. And the whole time I'm watching this thing, I'm thinking, what the heck is she thinking about? I mean, you watch a movie through the eyes of somebody else when you're in the thing like that. Oh, every little reference. Oh, how is she going to take this? Now we're building up to the orgasm. Oh my God, how's she going to take this? And she laughed. She was subdued laugh, and she leaned to Billy. Billy told me this later. She leaned over to Billy. She said, I would be laughing a lot more, but I know people are looking at me. And then she asked to have the film shown at Buckingham Palace with her friends, and then she said she could laugh and enjoy it, But when she's sitting there, she had to act as if, it wasn't that funny. That, I remember that.
Yes, well, you say, did you know? You never know,
Yeah.
right? You never know.
You don't know. You don't,
I mean,
and
it was so under the radar, this movie. It was so, it had two actors that basically weren't box office in any way.
Right.
Meg that was her first leading role.
Right. And your friend Richard Cohen once said to me, one of the things that we didn't put in there, we should have, was the true thing about men is that they don't listen.
Yes, men fake listening.
Fake listening. Women
Yes.
fake orgasm, men fake listening.
Yes.
So we didn't. We should have.
Yes.
We should have had that in there. We didn't. I don't know if you've ever gotten this comment, but people often ask me, well, there's these two people that they're professional people. They're living in New York. They're single people. They both have their own apartments in their lives, and yet the whole movie they're talking about relationships. Knowing single people, don't they ever talk about their careers and about work? And the answer I always give to them is, yeah, they talked about work all the time. I just didn't run the camera during that period.
Yes.
I only run the camera when they were talking about
But I remember talking to you about that, and you said,
Yeah.
I don't care about that.
Yeah.
And it was actually a great relief to me because I think people are always trying to stick that into
Yeah.
movies, and then you stick it in the beginning, and then you have to keep sticking it in because you
Right.
can't just stick it in once.
Right.
You've got to stick it in 3 times, and then
Right.
you stick something into a movie. It has to keep
Yeah. Right.
popping
Right.
up.
Right.
So then you've got this big fake subplot you didn't
Right.
care about at all.
That's so funny because a lot of times in a movie they say, well, you're shoehorning a relationship in. You're faking a romantic relationship. Here we were saying, no, we don't want to fake the work part of it. We want to keep that out. So yeah, no, because it was about just the two people. It wasn't about what they do for a living.
No, but I mean, one of the great reliefs of this movie, of course, there was no studio.
No, Castle Rock was the studio.
Yes, I mean, you were basically it. So
Yeah.
if you didn't want work, we didn't have to put work in.
Right,
And that
right.
was the end of that. It
Right.
was such a relief.
It was a mainstream picture, and I don't know these days if you can make mainstream pictures that don't have two stars, that don't have the obligatory scenes that they all ask for. It's very hard, I think. We were lucky because we had an independent company that had the wherewithal to finance something. I think that was a big part of it.
How much did that movie cost?
It cost $14.5 million. You know,
Yeah.
nothing cost $14.5 million now. Yeah, and it did, it did what it did. And I remember that we went to the Deauville Film Festival. That was great. We had fun there in France. That was a good thing. It was a great experience. I'm sure you see it when you have your movies that you make that come up on television and stuff. You remember the experience making the movie. You've had a life experience making a movie, so it's like a whole movie. You watch, oh yeah, remember we did that, we had that moment and stuff. That's what happens for me with this movie. For me, because I met my wife during the making of this movie, and I had a great pleasurable experience shooting in New York City, going to a great restaurant for lunch, which was a block or two away every time. To me, that's what I remember more than anything, more than the fact that now it became a hit and people loved it and whatever. It was a great experience for me.
For me, it was like, I remember the day you were shooting in Cafe Luxembourg.
Right.
And that scene was so great. And Bruno Kirby did some great improvs
Yeah.
while it was happening. I mean, one of the things to me that was so amazing on that movie was because I'd done most of my very young career, I wasn't young, but my career was, as a screenwriter with Mike Nichols, who was very, the script is the script, and we stay with the script, and we honor the script, and we rehearse the
Comes
script.
out of theater.
Comes out of theater, but you, of course, coming out of TV.
Yeah, everything changes.
Everything changes, and working with Billy, who was so hilariously funny, and Meg, who is so unbelievably gifted.
Yeah.
And I learned that you would just have to be a fool not to let the script change when you have people like that.
Right.
So there I was at Cafe Lux watching this scene get funnier and funnier as it went on. And I just remember walking out into this gorgeous spring day and thinking, oh my God, this movie is going to be so fabulous. And that night I went to see the dailies from the day before. And it was from the first time you shot the last scene in the movie.
Which we didn't use.
Yes, thank God you didn't use it.
Yeah.
And it was a disaster.
Right.
It was a total disaster. That scene was a tricky one. I think you shot it 3 times.
Yeah.
And I remember walking out into the spring night and thinking this is going to be the most humiliating experience of my
From the
life.
high to the low,
just 12 hours, there were 12, 8 hours,
Yeah, that's right. I remember we did shoot that ending 3 times, and we finally got it right. I think we finally got a really good, satisfying ending.
Yes.
Billy came up with the thing about the crinkle in your nose.
Yes, that was great.
He noticed that on her face, that her nose would crinkle up, and that line he had, when you know that you want to be with somebody for the rest of you want the rest of your life to start as soon as possible.
That was all great.
I said, oh my God,
That was all great.
that's really powerful stuff. Yeah. And then they wind up on the couch, just like we are. Now there's another story. They're one of the bunch of stories.
They're just like everyone else.
Yeah.
Just